The Detroit Tigers have another off day, so we are going to do one last minor league report to finish up the year. Take a look at the Erie Sea Wolves a lot as well within that report, and that's what we're going to talk about today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Tuesday, September 27th, 2022. Thank you for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Almost October already. Crazy. This season truly did fly by. Remember when the beginning of the year when it was almost in question of whether we'd have a season? I didn't think we were playing 162 this season. I really didn't. I thought this was 140 at best, I think is what I was predicting. 120 felt like a real possibility. I really didn't think that we were going to play 162 this year. And it feels like ages ago because of, I mean, not only everything that's been happening in the world, but just the Tiger season has felt like a million years. It has felt like a million years, and it also feels like it just started yesterday all at the same time. Well, the lockout part of it does. It feels a long ways away. But the summer itself feel like it flew by. But I think this Tiger season has just really, everybody's kind of dragging their feet to the end of the finish line here. So the Detroit Tigers don't play on Monday, one of their last off days of this. Their last off day? I'm trying to remember off the schedule. It's either their last or second to last off day of the season. So we are going to do one last minor league just recap of, I don't want to say minor league report because Detroit Tigers minor league report is a a really well run and fantastic source on the internet for all those. Raj and Chris, they do a fantastic job. Those are great dudes. We do a lot of stuff together. So I'm sure I'm probably going to get them on in the off season, to be honest with you. So I don't want to call this like the Detroit Tigers like a minor league report because that's like the name of their thing. But we are going to do one last kind of minor league sweep. We got some seasons coming to an end. Well, most of the minor league seasons are coming to an end or have ended. But the Erie Sea Wolves are making noise. Not only are they making noise, they are a win away from the Eastern League Championship. Super cool. This is a organization. I guess we'd call it an organization. This is a team that has never won a playoff series in team history before this season, and then now is a win away from the Eastern League Championship title. So super cool thing if you have your pulse on the Detroit Tigers, minor league system and whatnot. You've been hearing about this and probably keeping an eye on it. It's a super cool story. So we're going to look just that, again, we're not just going to focus on Erie, but we are going to talk about why Erie was so successful this year and everything that they had going on for them. Because there's a lot of reasons that Erie, look, say what you will about where this organization is ranked prospect wise, right? We take a look around all the different publications, and especially after graduating Green, it really fell off a cliff, and a lot of people are not very fond of the Tigers minor league system anymore. And that has to do for a plethora of reasons. Draft history prior to like last year's draft, really a big part of that. But I also think that while having success in the minor leagues for individual teams does not automatically mean you have a good farm system. Far from it, right? But at the same time, it doesn't not mean that, right? It doesn't not mean that you have a decent farm system. I'm not saying that the Tigers have even a top 15. I'm not even going to say that they have a top half of the league prospect pool to choose from, but there are some that have us at like 28, 29. And that just seems a little excessive to me. So we're going to talk about, some of the reasons why Erie has been so successful, and then just do one last roundup kind of overall and get my final thoughts on some of these dudes as the minor league season for a lot of these teams come to an end. Another thing that's important to note, and Raj of Detroit Minor League Report and Woodward Tigers is the one that brought this to my attention, and I think a lot of people's attention. A couple of days ago, he pointed out that since the addition of high A ball, which happened in the early 90s, this is the first time the Detroit Tigers organization has had all of their like A affiliates, all of their minor league affiliates go over 500 in the same season. And that's, again, a really cool accomplishment. And I don't think that this necessarily means that the Detroit Tigers have this non-scouted, like sleeper, incredible, like we have all these top prospects going around. But I do think that it's an indication of development. And I think that the Detroit Tigers organization as a whole has really taken a lot of good steps in the right direction when it comes to development. And we talked about it honestly a few times in the last couple of weeks now that I'm thinking about it. But this is an organization that for a long time had pretty much zero success stories with development. Like none. Like the only ones offensively in the last 20 years that really stand out are Nick Castellanos and Curtis Granderson. And I'm not saying that there haven't been, obviously, we've had homegrown talent come up and debut for the Tigers and give us, some meaningful at bats. But you want to talk about like real, like homegrown development that turned into a really solid borderline all-star or all-star level hitter. It's like two dudes in the last 20 years. And when looking at the pitching side of things, I mean, sure, like we made some trades and some of the dudes came over when they were still in the minors, but there's not too much to look at there as far as starting pitching besides Verlander and Rick Porcello either. Like that's not a huge long list. You look at all the good Tigers teams of the last 20 years, most of those rotations were guys we accumulated from other spots. So I think that it's really important to just look at and count any victories we can get. And I truly do believe that the development is headed in a really solid direction. And that's one of the reasons that I'm intrigued for the offseason. One of the many reasons is because I'm curious as to what Scott Harris is going to do with the developmental side of the Detroit Tigers. We kind of saw a complete overhaul when Hinch came in. He came in and top to bottom, going down to even the lower levels of the minors and even some front office staff above him and below him. Just a total change, really, in a lot of different places as far as coaching and development coaches went at a bunch of different levels. And like I said, the front office as well. So I think that again, just reiterating the importance of development. It's something that Scott Harris, I almost said Scott Frost, something that Scott Harris made a point in his introductory presser, and I think that's a good point to drive home. So development, taking strides, and I think that there is a lot of proof in that we will talk about in the next segment right here in a couple minutes. So like there are players that were either written off or not really looked at very fondly, or that nobody really thought was going to be an impact player. And while we still aren't 100% sure, none of these guys are sure things, and we don't have a ton of really high, top 100 highly rated prospects. There is something to be said for at least playing yourself to having an opportunity to make an impact at the major league level because you did so well at the minor league level. You know what I mean? So a lot of steps being taken. And I just, the notion that I said this last week too, but the notion that the Detroit Tigers is just a complete and utter dumpster fire and absolutely nothing for this organization is going right top to bottom, and they haven't done anything right, and nobody, like the last 7 years when Avila was GM, not one single thing good came out of it. And this is just a complete, whoever's going to come in now with Scott Harris is just going to have to press the reset button and start from scratch, because from the developmental leagues and whatnot of even below single A ball in the rookie leagues and such, all the way to the major league level, it's all garbage. That's not true. And there's a lot of steps to take. I'm not saying it's great. I'm not saying it's even good in a lot of cases, but there is some good. And I just want to highlight that. So we'll talk about some players we'll get into now that I'm done just spewing about how important I think development is and how I don't think the Tigers is really that bad of a situation when it comes to that side of things. Let's talk about some players and some teams individually. But first, I got to tell you all about our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up to the minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including the MLB, MMA, boxing, and even golf. So head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. Greatly appreciate y'all. So now that I have really hammered home, probably more than I should have, the importance of development and how there is certainly improvements that the Tigers. There's nothing that the Tigers do perfectly. This is still, we are where we are currently, but I think we're taking some strides there, and the development is developing. Look at that. The Erie Sea Wolves, one win away from the Eastern League Championship. They won 6-5 on Sunday in a crazy game. I highly recommend watching these games if you can find a way to. It's very entertaining. And yeah, I mean, Gage Workman had three, four RBIs. Parker Meadows had a 3-hit day, including a home run. Like it was a really fun baseball game to watch. And I think why don't we just start? I said his name, so let's just start there with Parker Meadows. One of the big stories of the Tigers minor league season, one of the biggest. I mean, it really is. It's like Kerry Carpenter slash Wilmer Flores at like tied for one. Wilmer might just even be outright one. Carpenter, no, minor league story only. I'm going Wilmer and Carpenter tied at kind of a 1A, 1B. And then Parker Meadows is right up there in the top 2 or 3 names there for biggest storylines of the minor league season for us. This was a dude that in previous years, I mean, if you just go to his OPS by year since he was out of the rookie league, it was 608, 623, and then back again in 2018, he was in the rookie league and he hit pretty well. But 2019, West Michigan 608. 2021 in Lakeland and West Michigan 697 and 620. And then this year shows up, makes some tweaks in his swing, and is hitting the cover off the baseball. An 813 OPS in West Michigan, gets called up to Erie, starts off relatively slow, and we're all kind of like, okay, like still some work to be done, and then just bang, and just went absolute gangbusters. And not only that, was better than he was in West Michigan. Raised his batting average significantly, 45 points, raised his on base percentage, like 60 points. Just really, really, I mean, slugging percentage was really solid. He has an 820 OPS in Erie in 113 games, and the 813 OPS in West Michigan was only in like 14 or 15 games before he got the call up. He got called up pretty quickly. So most of his work has been with better numbers in a more difficult league, or at least a higher up league. So one of the big success stories of the year for sure. And at 22 years old, he'll be 23 next season. I think he turns 23 in November. This will be a dude, lefty bat. He is, for my money, the fastest dude in the entire organization. He has wheels, right? Speed kills. And I think that he can utilize that to be a really good defender. He runs the bases really well. And now he's hitting. This is a dude that, again, we talked about last week with kind of decisions to be made on who to add to the 40-man roster or not. This is a big one. And this is a dude that I think will get put on the 40-man roster. One of the big success stories of the development of this organization this year. and has been a huge reason as to why the Erie Sea Wolves find themselves a win away from the Eastern League Championship. But the biggest reason, and I can say this with confidence, the biggest reason that the Erie Sea Wolves find themselves so successful this year is the pitching. By the end of the year, it wasn't like this on opening day, but by the end of the season, by now, they look around and they have a legitimate three-headed monster at the top of their rotation in Wilmer Flores, Ty Madden, and Reese Olson, who are all in Double A right now, and all dudes that a lot of people view really highly. I mean, you have in the Erie Seawolves rotation, you have 3 Detroit Tigers top 10 prospects and 2 top 4 prospects, right? And like Jackson Joe been in the season in high A. So like he's a candidate next year to be in Erie, right? And I'm sure when looking at if Wilmer Flores and Ty Madden start off next year like they pitch for a majority of this season, they might be fast tracked to Toledo. So I'm not saying it's just going to be like all of next year. You're just going to have like this bunch of a rotation of every top prospect in the Tiger system. But it's really cool for this season to see all 3 of them end the year in the same rotation. Wilmer Flores, like I said when talking about Parker Meadows, is easily one of the biggest success stories, if not success might be me jumping the gun a little bit. These dudes haven't made the major leagues yet, but one of the biggest storylines just flat out in the entire Tigers organization, top to bottom. You include all of the, we'll just call them failures at the major league level, and all of the reasons that I just accidentally hit my table. That was an accident. I'm not that mad, but all of the reasons that the Detroit Tigers have seemingly failed, and all the reasons that players have flopped and not lived up to expectations, and all this frustration at the major league level. Within that, Wilmer Flores is already becoming a semi-household name within Tigers fans because of how much he's been talked about online and even on broadcasts and stuff, because he was an undrafted domestic signing. And I know that it was in 2020 and that was only a 5-round draft or whatever. So it doesn't, he would have been drafted if it was 20 rounds for sure. But that doesn't happen. You don't find undrafted, right? Like the undrafted players that end up being successful are all of the international signees. This dude was a domestic signee, like he's from, you know what I mean, and to have him turn out to be now our number 3 prospect in our entire organization is a super cool story. And he's got the hair, and everybody loves talking about like the hair flips and whatnot. But he is electric to watch. Incredible fastball, very, very solid curveball. It's classified as a curve, kind of has a sliding motion term, kind of like a slurve type of thing, but it's an electric pitch. Solid changeup at times. I think that's the next step in his development, is really honing in and making that changeup a true plus pitch. Control seems to be a hit or miss thing right now. Again, that's a lot of pitchers at his stage in development are kind of at that stage where control can be hit or miss at times. He's in Double A. He's 21 years old. He will be 22 in February. So at the start of next season, once camp rolls around, he'll have just turned 22. I mean, this is just somebody that everyone should be really, really excited about. Watching him pitch has been one of the biggest bright spots of the entire summer for me, as someone who covers this team every single day and desperately is trying to look for bright spots. Wilmer Flores has certainly been that. And he started off the season in, did he go across two? He went across 2 teams, not 3. Started the season in West Michigan, and then obviously, like I said, ended up making a majority of his playing time in Erie. And another guy that kind of started off slow, then got really good, then got popped a couple of times, then got really good again. So kind of he ended with a 3.01 ERA in his first stint. He started 19 games in Erie's first stint in Double A, has an ERA of almost sub 3. Like, this is me being really nitpicky, but the command is definitely consistent command, because he shows signs where he's hitting his spots. It's consistent command on a day in and day out basis is the next step in development. But unbelievable strikeout numbers, 95 Ks in 83 innings in Double A. And in West Michigan, he had a 1.83 ERA and had 35 strikeouts in 19 innings before getting the call up. a whip of 105 this year in Erie. Easily one of the biggest storylines of the year, as I keep saying. Ty Madden, another really, really cool story to follow, was just drafted in 2021 and already finds himself with a sub 3 ERA in Erie to end the 2022 season. So a dude that is really impressed, is being fast tracked. He was an absolute dog coming out of the draft. This was a dude that I was really, really excited about and really wanted. I've said really a million times. I'm very sorry. Super pumped about him on draft night. Super pumped. And somebody that I have pretty high expectations for. In 19 starts in West Michigan, he had a 3.10 ERA, and in 7 starts in Erie, he has a 2.78 ERA, 49 strikeouts and 35 and two-thirds innings. Has looked really solid. And again, this is another dude that has a really solid fastball, and he has a curveball and a slider, and the slider has been the plus pitch so far. The curveball has been really nice. He has a changeup too that grades out positively. I'm like, if you aren't on the Ty Madden train for whatever reason, he's really good. I'm really pumped about Ty Madden. So another guy that I was glad got the call up, and again got to finish his season with a really good organization and a really good team in Erie. We will get into the rest of some of these guys I want to talk about. We'll finish up the Erie Sea Wolves talk and then just kind of do a quick rundown of anybody else that stands out. We'll do that right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Okay, so the other pitcher that I want to talk about in Erie is Reese Olson, the infamously the return for Daniel Norris has been really intriguing. Really intriguing. I think the biggest thing for him is just his slider is so nasty. His off speed stuff looks really phenomenal. Now he has a lot of command stuff that he still needs to work through as well. This is a dude that at one point was striking out everybody in sight and then kind of lost the command a little bit, had to re-find himself, re-get into a groove, was hit pretty hard at one point this season as well. Ended with a 4.14 ERA, spent the entire year in Erie, so 26 games, 25 of them he started, 4.14 ERA, 119 and two-thirds innings, and 168 strikeouts, ended with a whip of 1.23. So you'd like the walk numbers to go down a little bit. They're not astronomical. I mean, he had 38 walks in almost 120 innings. They're not terrible by any stretch, but ideally you'd like that whip to be a little lower. But I think the biggest thing for him, like I said, is really just command. He shows signs. His is even just more inconsistent at the present moment. He shows signs of when he is even in the general area. It's kind of like what I say about Alex Lang. If he's even in the general vicinity of where he wants to hit it, it's going to be a swing and a miss. He's got great whiff stuff and great whiff potential. Again, especially with his slider is lethal, ton of movement on it. But there's still a lot of development stuff. And with him repeating his mechanics over and over again on a consistent basis and not getting kind of lost later in games or from start to start. Gosh, nose got itchy again, man. I don't know why. I don't know what is wrong with my nose, but I am really excited about Reese Olson. I think he's the one of these three that you kind of look at and you go, yeah, long term, there might be some bullpen potential. And people say that and everybody freaks out and goes like, that's super insulting or like that. Like, it's not a bad thing at all. You know how important a bullpen is? We are Detroit Tigers fans. We watched the early 2010 Detroit Tigers and how important a bullpen is, right? So that's not a bad thing at all. And it's not like he's getting moved to the bullpen tomorrow. Like he is going to be looked at as a starter in the minor leagues. And they should continue to look at him as a starter. And I hope he makes the adjustments. And I hope that he becomes a starter at the major league level, because with the amount of stuff and movement that his secondary stuff has, he could be really, really lethal there. So just a whiff factory in the starting rotation in Erie, and that was super cool to watch at the end of this year, especially the second half when all three of those dudes were up at the same time. I think those are probably the biggest names that I want to cover in Erie. As far as Brant Herter as well, had a nice little coming out party this season. And look, Herter's a dude that again was drafted in the 7th round in 2021. He ended in Erie. He started in Lakeland, right? He started in Lakeland, had a 2.98 ERA, got promoted to West Michigan, 3.2 ERA, got promoted to Lakeland. Has only played 4 games, or got promoted to Erie rather. Has only appeared in 4 games in Erie. So not very big sample size there, and has given up some runs, honestly, since being called up. But in Lakeland and West Michigan, really turned heads and really kind of moved through the system really quickly, especially because of his age. He's 24 years old, just turned 24 in September already. So they're looking at him going, "Hey man, if you keep producing, we're just going to fast track you and just keep you're just going to fly up." So he'll start in Erie next year, I'm sure. Um, there's so many dudes that I really like. Andre Lipsius is someone that I have very vocally been a huge fan of because he is such a walk machine. He's an on base percentage king. Those are my favorite hitters. And he started off the season in Double A, played 88 games in Erie, and then was promoted to Toledo for the last month and a half of the season there. He's a big reason why Erie got off to a good start. There's so many names that you can point to. And I mean, Kerry Carpenter, right? Hit a lot of his home runs in his leading the minor leagues in home runs campaign. Started off in Erie and then got promoted to Toledo, and obviously now is in Detroit. But I mean, Josh Crouch, somebody that Chris Brown of Woodward Tigers put me onto, and I am in love with now. He's ending the season in Double A. There's so many good stories with dudes that started off below Erie. It's just basically it's the perfect culmination. That's I didn't even come close to saying that word correctly. Been the perfect in between point of, and I guess that makes sense, single A, double A, triple A majors, but it's been the perfect in between point of the minor league system this year where all the dudes below Erie that have had really standout seasons that have been promoted throughout the year have ended the season in Erie and are getting a look as they go through the playoffs and win playoff series, and now again are a win away from an Eastern League championship. And that's been one of the reasons why they've been so successful down the stretch. And the reason that they got off to a hot start and won a lot of games early was because a lot of dudes that are in AAA or even the majors right now started off the season in Erie. So it's been a perfect kind of like passing of the torch moment throughout Erie, Pennsylvania. It's been super cool to watch. And just everybody who's gone through that team this year, it's been one of the coolest storylines of the season. So very fun, a little bit of fun in a season that at the major league level has not had a whole lot of it. When looking forward, and we talk, if you want to go back and look at all the people that are going to be Rule 5 eligible and talk about if they're going to make the 40 man or not. We did an episode on that last week, 2 weeks ago. You could find it. It's 40 man roster breakdown is the name of the episode. Looking ahead at next season and where we might see some of these dudes, and we'll talk about this for sure as the winter goes on and we get closer to the start of next season. But just like a quick hitter, just kind of running through Jackson Jobe. Next year, he should get some pretty significant playing time in Erie, which I think if everything goes correctly, which is super exciting. I mean, Jace Young could be a dude that started off slow and then by the end of the season started picking it up a little bit, kind of found his stroke. Really good OBP numbers, drawn a lot of walks in West Michigan for the Tigers 2022 first round pick. So he's another dude that pretty early on next year could find himself in Erie and moving pretty quickly. I'm just going through the top 10 right now of the MLB.com prospect rankings. Wilmer Flores might find himself just in Toledo to start off the year, or at least like really quickly. Hey, we're going to start you in Toledo or Erie rather. And within 2 or 3 starts, if you're looking good, we're going to send you up to Toledo right away. It might be one of those situations. Ty Madden probably starts in Erie, but could find himself in Toledo by the midway of next summer. Colt Keith. Oh my goodness, Colt Keith. Really disappointing that the injury bug got to him and he had to miss so much time, but he was crushing. This is one of my favorite prospects in the entire organization. I am a huge Colt Keith fan. and believer. Was the Tigers' fifth round pick in 2020, the year they took Torkelson. They took him at 18 years old out of high school, and he's now 21 years old and is just turned 21 years old. He'll be 21. He will turn 22 in August of next season. So this is a dude that I am so high on, and played for like 3 or 4 different teams last year because he kept hitting really well and getting moved up. And somebody that when he first joined the organization, people looked at and went, this is probably just like a pitch to contact, not pitch to contact, that's pitchers, but a contact hitter rather. And if he gets lucky, might get some gap power in Comerica and whatnot. And he has done nothing but crush the baseball. Had a 544 slugging percentage in West Michigan, paired with a 370 on base percentage. It's a 914 OPS in 48 games in West Michigan before the injury. 9 home runs in 48 games is a really good clip. 22 walks, 42 strikeouts, solid numbers. I mean, over 300 batting average. Assuming health, he will assuredly start the season at 21 years old in Erie, and I cannot wait to watch him again. Very, very just awesome story. I mean, Isaac Pacheco, guy that had his relationship with Jackson Jobe, they're like really close buddies, so that's been cool to kind of watch on social media and whatnot. But was the second round pick in 2021, right? We went Jobe, we went Madden, and then we went Pacheco. He's kind of had a nice second half of the season and end of the year in West Michigan. Started off slow in Lakeland, then adjusted and got hot. Then started off slow in West Michigan, adjusted and got a little better. Only played in 18 games in West Michigan and did not hit very well in them. But so he'll probably start there next year. But again, a guy that could get a call up to Erie. When looking at this is just final word stuff, but when looking at this organization, we have a lot of these dudes that are, again, next year are either go, and I know we're focusing on Erie and that kind of seems weird, but it's just because of all the success they found this year. Are either going to yet again, like start right below Erie and could get a quick call up, or start in Erie and could find themselves in Toledo, which we saw this year how quickly, if you start in Erie and then hit well and get promoted and hit well in Toledo, you could find yourself in the major league roster by September. That's not out of the realm of possibility at all. We've seen it with quite a few players, Kreider, Carpenter, etc. So next year we could start seeing some of these dudes start filtering through. And I think in the next 2 years, counting next year and the year after that, I think we're going to see a kind of a floodgates scenario where a lot of these dudes that we're looking at going, hey, this prospect might be somebody that might be a little bit overlooked, are going to start debuting next year and the year after. I think that the next 2 years we're going to see a lot of really fun and intriguing prospects at the major league level, and I'm pretty excited about that. So very solid year for development. Even though it may not seem like it at times, development, not bad. Not bad, Tigers. Not bad. Certainly a lot of areas to improve. A lot of areas to improve, right? There's a lot of these dudes that we want to take the next step. We want to get to the next level, etc. It's vital. It is vital that we don't just become complacent and go, hey, there's some good things happen with development in 2022. Let's just do nothing. No, there is a lot. I don't want to make this sound like this is a well-oiled machine that is just like incredible. No, there's a lot that can still improve on this side of the organization, but it's not all dark clouds and just, sadness when it comes to top to bottom everything within the organization either. That's all. Thank you for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every day. Now, for your next listen, check out the Locked On MLB podcast. MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan brings humor, passion, and his unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories from around the league. Follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Back at it tomorrow. Start playing some games again. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.